Hi there, this is Ezekiel Dasho, and today I'm going to draw this tree frog. Oh, have you ever woken up in the morning and thought to yourself, man, I'm going to draw myself a tree frog? Well, today I did, and I have no idea why. Let's look at this thing. I haven't drawn a tree frog in a long time. So, coming to it with fresh eyes is sometimes a help, sometimes it's a little bit wonky. I think, as with most objects that we draw, we'll start by sort of getting a general sense of the area on the page we want it to occupy. So we'll write about here, and the rough shape of the frog, I mean, we can kind of just very roughly say we want it to, the head, the top crest of the head part to be about here, and the the eyelids, these ridges here to be about here. And again, I'm using a 4B pencil and this very sort of soft touch to, I can't stress how light this touch is. I'm barely pushing down at all. It's just kind of letting the pencil drag on the paper. And that's going to let us build this shape up. And so we'll get kind of this blocking phase. We'll block this eye in here. And we see his mouth coming that way, and let's get his nose in here. We see his nostril ridge here, and his nostril there. And, we can leave these places for adjustment a little bit. So the mouth is a little bit tricky because it's such a long line, and we want it to gel properly with the rest of the picture. So the thing that we want to pay careful attention to with the mouth line there is the distance between the eye and the mouth here, as well as here, and then again this distance here. For now, we'll just block it in and keep this rolling along. I hope this can be a pretty quick sketch, but sometimes I can get sort of immersed in the fine details, and that's okay too, but I want to make no idea why I thought tree frog this morning, but I did. I'll follow through with it, and then find a drawing of another sort to post in my next video. So here we got the neck, and we've got this kind of fold here. Don't want to get too deep into the shading right now, kind of getting lost in the shading. But we want to keep them blocking in the form for now. So here's his front arm, and this line is almost drawn for you there. I always loved tree frogs. I don't know what it is about these little guys. Maybe it's because I'm a child of the 80s and saving the rainforest and that sort of thing was a big deal back then. Maybe it's just because they're so cute. I don't know. His hands are really fun to draw. These pads on the fingers. And then on this side, we've got this. Maybe it's that green color. There's something about him. I just don't know. Let's see here. And then this back foot, finger, I guess, or toe on the back foot is kind of arched up in this weird way, and this front finger kind of curves here, and then there's a little bit of foreshortening or something. It kind of looks like that, and the knee, rear knee, or whatever. A little shading there. So Here we go with this pectorals, I guess, that it's sort of extending from what would be the underarm across the chest. And it looks like, I don't know if that's shadow or if that's a marking on the body, but there's this like very small little black area right there. And then there's another toe or thumb or something like that. And so, let's see, it might be helpful at this point to get this, like the branch that he's sitting on in there, and it's the angle, just kind of like, I would say match it up with his eyes, or it sort of runs parallel with his mouth too. Maybe that's a good way to look at it. However you do it, just keep it relatively slight, but it is at a little bit of an angle. And then his thumb comes in right about under his nostril. And his other finger, my hands are a little too far away from each other here. Maybe extend this thumb a little bit. And that brings them closer together like they are in the picture. So using this really light touch, and I've gone over this before, but it does make it so nice when you need to make little adjustments like that. You don't need to erase or anything. The building phase of the picture just allows you to make those little adjustments, and it just winds up adding depth to the shading in the final picture and making I think in a lot of ways, a more interesting looking picture than if everything's just perfect lines everywhere. And it can look pretty, but sometimes when everything's so perfect like that, it can kind of look like it was drawn by like a robot at the mall or something like that. And if that's your thing, that's cool. But I like things that look a little more organic and alive, I think, than mechanical and manufactured or computerized, at least when it comes to drawing. And so here we've got the arm. I guess the short version of what I was saying, to make a long story short, too late. It's don't be afraid to make little mistakes, and if you do, like this line here, that, I don't know, doesn't really belong there, but not worried about it. Definitely don't do, the young people in my life and my family or whatever, or their friends, what you see them doing is sometimes they make a mistake and they want to throw it away right away. And maybe they didn't know that, their mistake was actually totally not that bad, easily fixable, something you just work through. You're never going to get to the end of the race if you just quit the second that you make a misstep. You're never going to finish the show if you just stop the show every time you miss a line, that kind of thing. And so just persevere through any mistakes that you make. And a lot of what creating is about is being able to just work through the difficult times or the mistakes or whatever and still keep going. So, if it's one of those things you see with people who think, well, I can't draw. Well, it's not because you are somehow incapable of doing it. It's because you think you can't, or someone, no one's ever showed you how to work the angles or, line things up or really, triangulate the angles and kind of see the picture that you're working with, or no one's ever showed you how to hold a pencil or whatever. And a lot of people just think that, well, because, I can't just pick up a pencil and have this thing magically come out, then I can't draw. But it's like, it's that thing of we all kind of start with stick figures and stuff. And anyone can do it. Doesn't take some magical, gift from heaven or something like that. It's really something that just learning to see and learning to build the shapes and things like that. Kind of like learning to cook or something, or any like athletic skill or musical instrument or anything like that. But a lot of, what it is about. It seems like the art world, maybe with music too, there tends to certain types of people involved with it. Like everyone's heard a horror story about, like a high school art teacher who shattered some budding artist's dream of becoming an artist and told them they should just quit, and you know what I mean. And for what it's worth, if that's ever happened to you, pick it up again. Screw that person. Oh, maybe pardon my French, but don't let anybody ever tell you that you're not good enough to make great artwork and be creative at any level. Creating is its own reward. I mean, there's literally like the physical reward of creating something. When you make art, you wind up with a beautiful picture at the end. But it goes deeper than that too. I don't know really how to explain. So like now we're getting into the shading part with this froggy here, and I'm going to do the light shading, the round of shading first, and then we'll as we go, we'll pick out some of these areas that are darker. So I see this shadow here that's pretty dark. The lighting in this photograph is interesting. I mean, it's a black background. It's a dark brown, like branch or something that he's sitting on. And so there's a lot of darkness in the background. I don't want to go ahead and draw, color in the background of this picture black, although you could do that. Definitely, if you were diligent about it, it would definitely make the picture pop pretty well. It'll take a little while, and I don't think, I don't know if it's worth anyone's time to just watch me sit in color in the background of this picture, so I'm going to just do it on a white background. I'm just kind of right now just texturizing the shadows in the tree here, and I'm looking for along his feet like areas where I can see like a darker shadow, like right here, maybe a little bit here, kind of there. And it's subtle, but it'll help it's true to the picture, and it'll help these areas look correct. It's a weird combination of a black background, black background, and an extremely like hot light, like a white or yellow light or something. And so it's nice because it lights up all the details of the subject, but it's also a little bit harsh, I guess. But it's great for being able to see the details on the frog, so that's kind of one of the reasons I chose it. Also, I mean, if you follow the link to the details of the photograph, you'll notice that it's pretty popular photograph on the Commons, on the Wiki Commons. It's another reason I chose it. But also it just kind of popped out at me when I was looking for pictures of tree frogs. So let's get his pupils in here. Maybe start with this one, and they're weird slits. And I guess it's just to gently lay them in at first. You don't want them to go too far, but you don't want them to be too narrow either, or too long or too short. So I think that's good for now. Now I want this angle here between the front of this pupil and this pupil here to be correct. So what I'm going to do is just draw this imaginary line here and gently start, and then paying attention to the angle that that's placed. This is going to have a lot of impact on the character, the look of your frog. And so it's important. Now, we see, if you look closely at the eye, the top and the bottom are bound by very fine black lines. So I'm going to use the sharper edge of my pencil and get some of that in there. And see if I can describe. I'm pushing in a little harder. I've changed up my grip a little bit. And I'm almost making like brush strokes. I'm not like drawing, like drawing lines or something. I'm definitely got this brush stroke motion. But I'm using the sharper edges and the points of my pencil or my lead that have sort of developed as I've been shading the picture. And let's go there. We could do else. Another thing we can do here is there's this really hot white spot in the eye right about there, and the rest of it is shaded very similarly to a sphere, but it's got some coloration. I'm not going to get super into the fine details of the various capillaries or whatever are in the iris, but I do want to get some shading in there, and enough so that you can tell that there's a shine. And I want to be careful because it's easy to make it too dark in places, or have the contrast be too blunt, and I want it to be subtle like it is in the picture. So and this like circular motion for some of the shading here, and we'll do this circular motion here. We're getting into the home stretch. Let's get this other eye knocked out here. Or get the light in the eye like right about there. And similarly, this is sort of a delicate move with the edges of the eye, and he's got this darker black like part of his eye Looks like his tear duct almost or something. If they have tear ducts, I'm not sure. So then in with the shading and back to this super light touch. It's got another hot white spot there. Kind of save that so that it stays white. And we can touch up some of these areas in a bit here. For now, let's move on to the mouth area. And some of these shadows in here. But these nice, like, there's a lot of bounce lighting happening because the lighting's so bright that it's just bouncing up and hitting under his chin or her chin. Don't know. And so we'll get some of these shadows in, and the skin sort of lends itself well to this circular shading motion. Here, just if you've missed any little dark areas that you can highlight to accentuate or to bring it in line with the photograph, there are these like little dark spots that'll help define the and so we've got a few more shadows to do here. On this leg, there's this really nice stark shadow, and then it carries over into the arm. And this part here, the green part of his arm, is darker than the light yellow part, obviously. And I think a good way to do that is to just hit it with some shadowing or some shading. And then when you're going over for the entire pass of shading, hit that again so it retains its, relative difference from the color beside it. The yellow can show up pretty light, and there are lots of shiny places to play with here too. So, if you are so inclined, you could grab like a kneading eraser or an electric eraser or some other kind of tool and kind of play with that a little bit. And you could probably get some very wet looking shiny texture there. And then here we've got this really shiny spot on his knee. We'll just block that out. It's bright. And then, I want this to have a little more contrast, so I'm going to go in and get that area a little more. And the log, here's too light, so let's... Too light relative to the the foot of the frog here, which is definitely much brighter than the dark brown wood. So we can go in and darken that up. And now we can do this finishing pass of darks and kind of get the drawing into a finished state. Almost totally neglected his nostrils here, and I think they deserve a little bit of TLC. So there's a little bit of shading that needs to happen on his face too, but it doesn't have to be a lot. And I think basically just to go along with the contours of it a little bit, and then kind of squint your eyes maybe, and you can see that the front of the face is catching most of the light. There are these nice like little dragon looking shadows and by his nose. So then just super lightly over this whiter area so that it's not flat white. Same for some of these other areas. And his shadow under his mouth almost touches his front of his mouth there. And now maybe a little bit of final touches on the eyelid. And here I've got this shine. Put some color next to it so that it's defined. I don't know if that's going to even pick up on the camera. But it'll hold up for a viewer at closer range. And I guess it does pick up a little bit. These subtle things our eyes can see more than we think they can. We catch more than we know, in an instant. We can observe more than we actually process on a conscious level. That's one of the reasons why when you're doing portraits, eyes should be correct, because people will just in an instant kind of catch all of that stuff without actually knowing what they've seen on a more frontal, like conscious of it way. If you ask them to describe it, they can, call it forward and tell you about it, but they don't even need to think about it usually. It's just an instinct almost. That's just so complex. And let's get a couple of these shadows in. I like to look for spaces that I've sort of left too bland and make sure that they're not like this area here could get a little more, and this area here there's almost like a dark line from his shadow here, and indeed it continues there. And if you need, if you want to like make any of these lights lighter or whatever, you've got this handy dandy log here to help you draw the relative contrast in. So rather than worrying about how light an area is, you know, on the frog's hand or whatever, you can just darken up the log behind it a little bit and bring it forward that way. And this little froggy is almost ready for market. Let's just do a couple little edges here and edges there. And this definitely is a good subject to use, that practice that circular shading on. Let's take a little step back and look at it here. Oh, maybe give him a little more contrast on this arm where it's here, and kind of bring in some of these finger tendons a little bit more. They're sort of not very well demarcated on my drawing, so I've got room to improve. And these areas here, they're almost bright white, so I don't want that. That'll look too flat. And let's get there's this sort of shade coming from the knuckles on this back toe. Let's get some of that going there. So now I'm going to go around again and look for any areas that definitely need more darkness. His mouth could extend a little farther. And the shadow here could be a little deeper. So it's just this process of, you know, analyzation and self-correction, and that process can lead to great things visually. So, almost ready to call it. Oh, I like it. Let's see if I don't feel quite ready to sign it yet. Maybe it's this area here. It needs to be a little darker. Or maybe this area here. Oh. There we go. Love it. Okay. Thanks for being with me, and we'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with people who love to draw. as much as you and I do. And thanks for watching.